Hello, my name is Cheri Brunner Daschle, and I'm here today representing the Tread of Pioneers Museum. We are collecting oral interviews for a project called Tales of the Old Junior High. There will be interviews of staff, teachers, and administrators who worked at Steamboat Springs Junior High School on 7th Street in the 1970s, before Steamboat Springs Middle School was built on the Strawberry Park campus on Amethyst Street. Please tell me your name and what your position was at the junior high school on 7th Street.
Okay, my name is Becky Hicks. I was the Title I reading teacher for the whole time I was at the old junior high. When we moved to the new middle school, then I started teaching history and language arts, but 20 years into my career. So the first 5 years at the middle school, I was the reading specialist.
What about library?
Well, actually, I didn't start as a teacher. I started as a substitute in the winter semester of '76, and then in the fall semester, I became Mary Brassel's aide in the library. And 1 or 2 months into the school year, Bud Brooke came and asked me if I would be willing to teach a reading class, last period of the day, in the little teeny room next to his office. So that's how I got my start.
Did you teach 6th, 7th, and 8th graders?
At the old school, I taught 7th and 8th, and then 1 year I taught one class of 6th graders. And then at the newer middle school, It was 7th and 8th.
How many years did you teach total?
30. And you and I were the last two people at the Strawberry Park Middle School that had taught and worked at the
old building.
At the building on 7th Street.
Did we retire the same year?
Yeah.
I remember the retirement party.
06. It was, yeah. We were the last
Yes,
two
06.
that had been at the old school.
Making us the old guard. Where did you grow up and go to school?
Okay, I was born in Michigan, but I was 4 when we moved. So I grew up in Boulder and went to CU for my undergraduate and graduate degrees.
And what was your degree in?
I got a history degree with a social studies certificate, planning to teach. You had to have 30 hours of a major and another 30 hours in social sciences. So it was kind of like a double major to hit most of the social sciences.
And you didn't have to have a certain degree to teach reading, or did you end up going back?
Bud asked me to go back to graduate school.
Okay.
And he actually almost said, I just want you to start and see. But I went ahead and finished and got my degree. And my experience with it was that it sounds terrible, but I'm an exceptional reader. It's my one, everybody has a super skill. Mine happens to be reading. So I didn't know how to teach reading, but I was able to pick it apart and finally figure out what elements you needed to use you really just have to figure out how kids are thinking, so you know what part of the thought process they're not using.
I love that. You told me and you reminded me that your classroom was right next to Bud's office. Did you have a memory or two of that, of what would go on in his office when you were right next door?
Well, Bob Harris was the most wonderful assistant principal ever. When I first met him, and I was a little surprised that he could be loud and kind of tough, but the kids loved him. They respected him, and the kids who needed it, he would take them into Bud Root's office and just, drill sergeant level talking to them. And every once in a while I could hear that. And when I was a substitute, I had boys PE, and they were kind of flourishing, and I said, I'm going to tell Coach Harris about this. And, oh no, don't tell him. Don't tell him. I said, why not? He said, he'll make us fight. And I thought, that's odd. So I went and asked him about it. And I'm glad I did. He said, well, I take them down where nobody's watching. They put on the boxing gloves, and then they fight each other, and then they go back to class, and they both have a, bloody nose or whatever, and they figure out that fighting gets you nowhere. And I thought, man, that's really smart. So we were right next door, so I heard a few of the one-sided conversations that they had. I remember one time also, Winston Walker had the classroom above me, and there was a kid named Tim, and I don't remember his last name, but I know you'd know him. There was a cheer at the junior high at that time called Boom Shaba, and they stomped their feet and boom shaba, boom shaba. All of a sudden my ceiling is making lots of stomping noise. And I went upstairs, and Winston had left the room for just a minute, and Tim was there leading a boom shaba cheer on my ceiling. It's like, okay.
Do you remember them calling that Skylab up above?
Yes, I do, because the science classes.
Two science classes were right there, 8th and 7th grade, right?
Mm-hmm.
Gosh. What else do you remember about that building itself?
It was a really neat old brick facade. Inside was very institutional and smooth, and I don't know if it was pale green or pale gray or whatever. And the downstairs little gym, there was a lower gym on the bottom floor, basically a basement with a little bit of windows right at the upper level. Mm-hmm. But down there was also the boiler room and the women's bathroom for that part of the building, and it was kind of a creepy downstairs. The newer wings, the one by the old band room had another women's bathroom, but that was further away, so I used it was a nice bathroom, it just was down in this little creepy basement.
Yeah, a little dark and dank back there.
Mm-hmm.
How did you find out about Steamboat Springs, and what made you want to move and work here, or both of you? Or?
I was dating my husband, who was a wildlife officer, and he was working in Denver, and he didn't want a metro district. He wanted to be out. Mm-hmm. If you're an outdoors animal guy, you don't want to live in the city. And we drove up and looked at Kremling, because that district was open. Mm-hmm. And on the way back, he said, well, what do you think about Kremling? And I said, you can visit me in Denver anytime you want. So then a few months later, he said, well, the Steamboat district is open. Let's go up and look at Steamboat. And of course, I'd grown up in Boulder, which is a fairly sophisticated community. Mm-hmm. And I liked Steamboat, and it had amenities, and I thought it was a pretty nice town. So we actually moved here 1 or 2 weeks after we got married.
Oh, wow.
And a lot of the people he worked with thought we got married because he was moving. We had decided to get married, but then we got married before we moved. And
where did you guys live first when you came?
Our first house was up on the boulevard, right by Yamanite and Boulevard. In fact, Sally Howard's daughter lives there now.
Oh, nice.
And this is my 4th house. My other 3 houses were all on the hill above Soda Creek, around the college area. We tried for 2 years to find a place up there, and couldn't find anything.
It's kind of old town Steamboat.
Because we lived there, then we lived above the college, and then I moved back again to Boulevard, to the little dead end of Boulevard. Mm-hmm. And I personally still think that's the best street in town.
Oh,
so it was kind of hard. It was kind of hard to leave the house we designed ourselves and raised our kids. And
do you remember at all what your salary was when you first started teaching, or what you guys paid for rent?
I do. I remember my first year teaching in 1976 was either $6,000 or $7,000. I kind of mixed up because Denver, I had just taught in Denver too, mm-hmm. but it was $6,000 or $7,000. And our house payment was, I think, $300 a month.
Oh my gosh.
But our first house cost $36,000. It was 1,200 square feet in a nice big yard, an old house. The kitchen had no insulation in the walls, and the cabinets had shelves that were So we did some remodeling, but
36.
and my parents thought we'd been robbed. Even the houses in Boulder at that time, for that size, were like $24,000. $24,000.
That's amazing.
So, but then 5 years later, we sold it for $89,000, and things have just gone up
and up from there.
So I can see why people can't move in, because, well, we lost a bunch of really good guys who worked on the 7th grade team when they hit about 32. Chris Curlin and Robert Casados.
Yeah.
The teachers earn enough that they could make the monthly payments, but they can't save $200,000 for a down payment.
Yeah.
I mean, who can do that?
Yeah.
So that's why we train them, they get really good, and they leave.
Yeah, and speaking of that, what were some of your impressions and memories of Steamboat in the 70s? I mean, you said, you know, it was harder to find a place to live and to keep the teachers that we had, who were really good teachers. But in the 70s, what do you remember? What did your kids like to do? Anything about Main Street? Or?
Well, my first child was born in 1980, so the 70s were just Jim and myself. There were 5,000 people here, and I remember going downtown at Winter Carnival or the 4th of July and knowing every other person on the street. Now, you grew up here, so you remember when you went to town and you knew everybody on the street. And I mean, Old Town was pretty much what it is. There was Steamboat 2, and there was one place out on toward south. I can't remember. It's below what was
like
Agate,
14?
Agate Creek and stuff. On, on River Road.
Yeah, yeah.
And Brooklyn was here. That was it.
Yeah.
No Fish Creek Falls, no Whistler. There was a little at the base, but not very much. So
yeah, the development was.
Yeah, it was very compact. And then when I was, one thing I do remember is my kids were born in like 80 and 83. And until about my last 5 years of teaching, I stopped in 06. I always asked the kids who lived in town, who lived out of town, because it would tell me something about their interests. And for years, it was almost 50-50, town kids and kids who lived out on a property. The last 3 years I was teaching, one kid had a grandparent with property, and the last 2 years there wasn't a single kid in my classes in 7th grade.
Wow.
And there were 6 classes of 7th graders at that point.
So nobody on a ranch, unless it was your grandparents.
And that was 3 years. Now, the last 2 years there was nobody that lived on property.
Gosh.
I'm sure there were some in 7th grade,
Yeah,
but they weren't in my
particular
room.
slice of kids. Yeah. Yeah. That's a
And
trend.
even my daughter graduated from high school in '99, and it was still almost 50-50 back then. So in that 6-year period, was a huge change in the population.
Yeah, less rural, more town, more tourist.
And a lot more of the kids started here in kindergarten. Even if they weren't born here, they started kindergarten here. And then the last 5 or 6 years, a lot of kids had come from somewhere else.
Do you have certain memories of certain teachers you worked with at the old junior high? Like you and Mary Brassel were pretty close.
Well, she was the librarian and I was her aide. And so even when I was teaching that one class, I was still her aide that whole year. So she became my best friend. And we had a wonderful time there. She did all these things for the holidays. At the library was called then, was like the center of the school. And she decorated for Halloween and for, she had Stuart Handloff, who's still involved with the arts here. He would come and hide behind the podium that had a big like dragon kind of lamp next to it. And we had the lights turned down low, and she and I both dressed as ghosts, and we had sheets over our head, and we're standing on chairs, and the students walk in, and one of them said, "Oh, I can tell which is Mrs. Hicks and which is Mrs. Bolden."
Yes, that's
Bolden
right.
was her name then.
That's right.
And I thought, well, duh, I'm a half a foot, I'm
Like
8
way-
inches
way-
shorter than she is. And then I go, see, those are Mrs. Hicks' shoes. But then they walked in, sat down, and then he, in his black cape, rose up from behind the podium and started telling creepy stories. And
I remember when
She
she
did
read the
puppet shows.
October Game by Ray Bradbury.
Oh, yeah.
She would get really into that.
when you were a student, no.
No, when she was
You're closer in
library.
age to us, yeah.
Yeah.
She had a puppet theater, and
That's right.
one of my favorite memories is the puppets were always kind of around on the desk afterwards, and there was one that was Lamb Chop. I don't know, probably most people don't know who Lamb Chop was, but it was Cheri, somebody or another.
Cheri Lewis.
Cheri Lewis, and she had Lamb Chop. And Lamb Chop didn't get put away. And there was a big closet that didn't have a roof on it because the library was so high. It was a double ceilinged room. And the closet had been built in the corner without a ceiling. So Mary took Lamb Chop and went, oh, and threw him over, and he landed in the closet. And we about had hysterics. And I sat close to the window, and I was really small and thin then, and got cold. And Mary was next to me, and she always got hot. And my desk was scrupulously clean because I can't work in clutter. It has nothing to do with,
It's just the way you are.
I mean, I don't do well in that. So, and her desk wasn't terrible, but it was a marked contrast. And here I was 5'5", and she was 6 feet, but we're 6 months apart in age.
Oh, I
And then
know.
Nancy Andretti,
Oh,
Janetti,
Andrus. Hummel.
Yeah, Hummel, taught 7th grade English. I shared my little teeny classroom the first year with the special ed teacher whose daughter's name, her daughter's name wasn't Becky. She has short dark hair. Anyway, she's the one who got Bud to start a reading class.
Okay.
She said, I have these kids for special ed where I'm, supporting them in the classroom and helping them with work for other teachers. And then I have them for this last period of the day as a formal teacher. And so my role is not as nurturing, and I find it getting in the way of what I'm doing in special ed and Brokaw.
That's right.
So we partitioned off this little room that wasn't more than 10 by 10 feet anyway. And so she had the first 4 feet, and I had the other 6 feet. And I had like 10 kids, which doesn't sound like much, but I had, no more than that. I had 2 study carrels that are, four at each table, and then some desks. And I had 6 kids at each study table for 4.
Oh, wow.
And I really felt my first year that I could only really promise myself I had gotten them to have pencil and paper every day to class because it was too many kids in too small a space.
Mm-hmm.
And it was my first year. I didn't feel I was a really good teacher until my 3rd year. It's kind of like when you're teaching a lesson, the first lesson you teach too much. So then you cut it down this next period and you teach too little. So by the 3rd period comes around, then
Then you have it down.
then you have it down. So
And Kathy Chamberlain taught reading
Yes.
as well, right?
yes, she taught 6th grade reading.
6th grade reading. Okay.
We had, the whole time I taught in 6th grade, there was, reading was one of the required subjects for all kids. And then in 7th grade and 8th grade, the kids that weren't doing well in reading came to me.
I don't think they teach reading at all at the new school.
They
Do they?
eliminated it my last 3 years because they wanted to make a combined three teams of 2. So I became the language arts and the history teacher. and I taught with Jeff. I always forget Jeff's last name.
Not Jeff Ruff.
No.
Jeff.
Newer, younger, and
He'll come to us.
he was science and math. But we had a lunch hour period class, and we had a choice of what to do. And the other team chose to do things like table manners and having people come in and give you beauty tips. And I talked my team into having it as a reading period. And I had some workbooks that had some really good exercises that basically dealt with comprehension in reading, which in 7th grade is what the real focus is. But they were either in science or social studies or math. So I ran all those off, and then at least 2 or 3 days of the week, they would teach this science or social studies lesson as a reading lesson and how to do that. So that's what happened during the lunch hour. And I never got the statistics to prove it, but I know that Tim Bishop said, well, the reading scores in 7th grade really went up this year. And I mean, we only did it with half the kids, so I don't know. So I told him very smugly, well, that's because you had a reading specialist on the 7th grade team. I took all credit, whether I deserved it or not.
So how many principals was that you worked with?
Well, Bud Root and Bob Harris were at the old junior high, and then were there at the new middle school for a number of years. I don't even remember how many. Then Sandy
Hall? Sandy Hall?
Sandy Hall was there for 3 or 4 years, and Tim Bishop was her assistant, and then he became the principal and Jerry Buelter became the assistant principal.
That's right, and that's who it was when you and I retired.
When we retired.
Yeah.
And the very first, that fall, my son was still in high school. And Bud and Bob and Sandy were always agreeable to letting you, if you could get somebody to cover your class, you could attend one of your kids' sporting events. And I was team teaching with Robert Casados. This was at the newer building, but he was a great guy. And I went in and wanted to leave early, and he would teach the one class I had left, because we took turns which class we taught. And I went in and I thought, you know, all the money I have in the bank from all these years of, you know, I never said, well, I only work half time, I don't want to come in for this work day except for half time, or, you know, I always felt like I put in my time, and so when I wanted to take a period off, I didn't worry that they thought I was a slacker. So here I go in to talk to these 2 new people, and I kind of thought, they have no idea if I'm a slacker or not. And it was kind of like, here I'm 3 years from retirement, and I'm like starting over. But
old guard.
Bud and Bob were the perfect combination. Bud was the master of efficiency and organization. Bud knew kids inside out. And the thing about Bud that I thought was really good was he recognized and knew who on the staff had strengths in certain areas. So for instance, the social studies teacher, Kilpatrick, what's his first name? Wayne Kilpatrick, was sort of the leader on social studies. And we didn't have departments at that point, or department heads, but within certain fields in the building, people would kind of rise up as the leaders, and then Bud would encourage that, and I thought it was a great delegation of duties instead of having to be the school leader in curriculum himself. He used the strengths of the teachers, and I always thought that was the strongest combination we had. I really liked working with Sandy Hall. She had a lot of really good ideas, and I enjoyed it, but the 2 of them were like, you couldn't ask for better support, better, you got what you needed from both of them, you got support from both of them, and I really liked that.
Bud was talking about how he and Bob worked together and how close they were and how he liked the way that they worked together too. And he said, and my desk was always neat, because like you, I had to have it neat. Bob's was always a mess. But that was the way he thought.
Yeah.
That's the way he did.
His piles, he knew what was there,
That's right.
and whatever.
But he said the same thing, and he just always had a sixth sense about kids. You know, there were some kids you could yell at and they would just crumple, and other ones you could yell at and they'd get it. And so
I called and asked him to come to my classroom at the old building, and I thought, oh no, I can tell if he comes in and starts in on this particular kid, the kid's gonna lose it and just blow up and whatever.
it will be.
And I thought, oh, this is gonna be bad. And Bob opened the door, looked at the kid, Richard. He said, Richard, come here, let's go out in the hall. It's like,
Very quietly.
he knew, he read the kid. And the other thing about the old junior high, I mean, I've been talking about the principals, but all of us who worked there, except for like one person, were within 4 or 5 years of the same age. We were all from about 26 or 27, which would have been you. And then there were some people up to their like 33 or something. And Van Fletcher, the counselor, was the only one that wasn't in our age group.
That's true.
And basically everybody that taught there, a few of them had their children before I got there, but not very many. Jean Labrie had, I think, maybe not. But it seemed like we just had a monthly party. Some of those monthly parties were baby showers.
That's
but
true.
we had a really tight, cohesive staff that all got along. We might not have all liked each other incredibly well, but it seemed like everybody, and we did things on weekends like track and field days, or we had scavenger hunt parties. And
We were trying to think the other with Bud, which parties. Do you remember his MASH party? Did you go to the MASH party?
I heard about them, where you hid. There was a game like sardines or something, and everybody, if you found somebody, you hid in the same place with them.
It could be. Now I don't remember that. They lived out on Elk River, he and Beth, and he loved the TV show MASH.
Oh no, I didn't go there.
So everybody wore either scrubs, or he said, and I didn't remember this part, that Mark Drake he dressed as Klinger. So he got an award. And they had a glass drip bottle, an IV bottle that had vodka in it or something on that order. And everybody had such a good time that, they wanted him to do it like every month. But we couldn't, and I did remember that. We went to the MASH party, but I can't remember any other parties that we had. So it might have been more the teachers, but you're right, we got together. I mean, there were baby showers and wedding showers.
Yeah, it's Sandy Childers' house was a baby shower for 2 people. One of them was Chris Decker, and I don't remember who the other one. Oh, was it you?
Yeah, it was us. We had a baby shower in Sandy's pretty backyard, just a block from the school.
And I know I went in with several people. We bought strollers.
Yeah, it was a nice place to have a shower too.
But we did have parties with a lot of the high school teachers too, because there was a big one at Cow Creek. And the reason I remember it was, again, Mark Drake and Karen came as a priest and a nun. But there was something quite off color about the priest that I won't mention.
Oh yeah, please don't.
But when you said Mark had the IV bottle, yeah.
And Mark was the football coach for the middle school. Winston was the football coach.
Oh,
right?
no, see, when I came, Drake was at the high school.
Okay, I think he did go to the high school not too long after that. And who else coached? Well, Bob coached basketball and football, I think. And there was somebody, and Winston coached. And Bert Svensson coached.
Yeah. I always ran the book at the basketball games.
Did you?
Kept the score and the fouls and the whatever.
I'd forgotten that we were all that close to the same age.
Oh yeah, we were.
Let me see what else.
You were the baby.
I was the baby.
Maybe
and I was actually 20 when I started. I was the baby.
Well, but I wasn't there for a few years.
That's
so.
right. I got older by the time you got there.
Yeah.
I do remember Mary in the library. First of all, I remember what that library looked like. It was large. It was like
There was 2 rooms.
Yeah, and huge windows,
Mm-hmm.
huge pine trees outside.
The
which
windows
they've since taken
leaked a lot of cold air, but
Yes.
it was an old building.
Do you remember a story about the library leaking water and the custodians were supposed to put tar on the roof? That might have been right before you came.
Well,
too.
you asked me something about that, and I don't remember the tar on the roof. I do remember coming in and the big, huge wet spot on the ceiling of the library, and that the wind blew the door
Oh,
closed.
thank you.
I have the outdoor door open, and it was the ghosts from the old building.
Yeah, we started talking about the ghosts, so of course they had to, get involved.
No, there was a huge wet spot, and part of the ceiling fell in.
Oh my
And
gosh.
I didn't remember that when you'd asked me about it. But yeah, and so we had to cover everything up, and I don't know
Finally, it got
where we
fixed.
went during that week that they had to fix the ceiling. We couldn't have been having classes and doing much in there, but
Well, the other thing I remember Mary doing was inviting speakers in.
mhm.
Do you remember, I remember Bob Swinehart quoting his poetry by heart, and this, I don't know if this is when you were there or not. And I remember the lady who wrote From Slavery to Affluence,
Daisy Leonard.
Daisy Leonard.
Daisy Leonard Anderson. Mhm.
Yeah, and she came and spoke.
Mhm.
And what was she sort of famous for?
She was the last surviving Civil War widow.
That's right.
Jim was really good friends with her, and so I don't know how many people. I'm the only one I know that ever had dinner at her house.
Really?
She always met you at the door. My kids loved going because she had little guinea chicks, hens, and Beth was so cute, and one time asked her if she could have a cookie. So when Daisy moved, she gave Beth her cookie jar. Daisy was born in the South, and her husband, Robert Anderson, was about 60 or 70 years old, and he went back to the South to find a wife. And so Daisy was 15, and she moved with him to Nebraska, and he had a pretty successful ranch there. But of course he died, at some point. And she was a widow, and she moved to Strawberry Park, and she wrote From Slavery to Affluence. And she went to Gettysburg when Bill Clinton, no, she went to Gettysburg, I don't remember, it was a 50th, 100th, 250th, whatever anniversary.
Mm-hmm.
And at that point there was a woman who was a Confederate
Oh, wow.
widow. So the 2 last widows were there. But then the Confederate widow died before Daisy,
Oh my gosh.
and she moved to Denver. But Jim always went out and helped her. I don't know I forget what you call when you're plucking turkeys,
Oh gosh.
because they had turkeys, and she gave away turkeys to friends. And he'd go out and they, I guess, dip the turkey in a big thing of hot water or something, and then plucked it,
Yeah.
and did all that
Take the
kind of
feathers off.
stuff. And Jim was never good with young ladies, but old ladies he was really. He
That's
was
fun that
really.
you guys had that connection.
Yeah.
Well, and I think we didn't realize what a big deal that was. Well, you did because you guys knew her personally, but to have her actually come and speak to the kids, it'd be fun to talk to some of those kids who grew up and went, I remember that now,
Mhm.
because that was a big deal.
It was. To know somebody that. She wasn't alive during the Civil War, but her husband was.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And she certainly grew up in the Jim Crow South.
Yep. Yep. She's an interesting lady. So you said you retired in '06. What do you miss about teaching?
Well, it was funny. Before I retired, I thought I would really miss it. And all my friends who had retired said, you won't miss it. I'm like, how can I not miss it? I really like it. I still enjoyed teaching when I retired. I was only 58, but in Colorado, you can retire with 30 years of service. You can actually retire with 20 years at 50.
Mm-hmm.
That's what the rules were back then anyway. And I just finally decided to retire because I could either have a life or I could have a job. I don't think people realize how much energy it takes to teach. You can't, like if you have an office job, you know, if you don't feel really good one day or kind of tired or whatever, you get work done, but not at the regular rate. And so then the next day or two you work extra hard and catch up. Well, in teaching, you can't have a bad day. You can't just, I'm going to take it a little bit easy today. They'll eat you alive. So you have to be up and active and engaged every minute of the day. And I would go home at night then, and it was like, dinner, dishes. I didn't have the steam left to do all my work from 5 o'clock till 9 o'clock at night, like I had always done when the kids were growing up. So I decided, okay, I have my 30 years in, and but I thought I would miss it because I really still liked it. And I find if I'm talking with somebody and you're talking about educational theory or how kids think and do something, I'll get very involved and very animated about it. But I worked at the preschool at the ski area the first winter I was retired. I only worked 2 days a week. I did it really for the ski pass. And the advantage for them was in January when they had too many people and not enough hours for these young girls that, you know, that their livelihood depended on it. And I had a place to live, and so I'd say, no, I don't have to come in this month if you don't want me. And then in April I worked a lot because that's when the kids left and went back to school. So I didn't go from no children to, I worked at the ski area for 3 years with the preschoolers and that age, which was totally different than 7th graders, but.
And was that the last time you worked and or volunteered or did anything, was right after you retired?
Yeah, for those 3 years I worked there. After that, my volunteer work was more with, we bought a cabin up in Hans Peak. It was a little house, it was a 1-bedroom house, and we made it a 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom house. And
oh, wow.
I was interested, I'd always thought I'd volunteer at the Tread of Pioneers when I retired. But then we were up at Hans Peak and I went to one of their meetings. So I got on the board of the Hans Peak Historic Society meeting, or society, and did my volunteer work for them.
For several years?
Oh, 10 years or something. Another friend started, and then I helped her run the arts and crafts fair there. There's an ice cream social, but then Dee Dee started the arts and crafts fair. But then I had all these contacts on the Front Range because my parents still lived there, and I would go around to the thrift shops and buy furniture, and I would refinish it, and like Dee Dee would paint. I mean, she's a selling professional artist.
Wow.
And they usually won't do craft-like things. She just said, okay, if we can make money for the Historic Society, we'll do that. So she would paint on top of these pieces of wooden furniture that I had done.
And you guys would sell those?
And we would sell
as a
them.
benefit for the...
Yeah.
Did you work in the museum itself?
I did not.
Okay. So more on the board and fundraisers.
I actually worked with the museum for about 5 or 6 years for the elementary school kids. The Steamboat kids will spend a day up in Hans Peak. And got to be so many classes from one school, we did both schools, that they had to do half and half. So half the day they were at the park, going through their museum and doing things over there, and then half the day they were at Hans Peak. And we had the schoolhouse, the museum, and the Wither cabin.
So you guys would actually do school in the schoolhouse? I love that.
I pretty much did the Wither cabin, but yeah. Before the Wither cabin was there, I had school in the schoolhouse. I had kids doing math problems. They loved the blackboard because they'd never seen a blackboard. We had blackboards at the old junior high. We didn't have whiteboards. I don't even think at the new building we had whiteboards to start with. We might have, but I don't remember. And I had to learn how to write with the whiteboard because it's faster. It doesn't hold the marker doesn't hold your hand like the chalk. And so I had to practice making sure it was still legible with a marker instead of a piece of chalk. But
So what did you like about living in Hans Peak and its history? And
Well, we never lived there full time.
okay.
We kept our house in town. And the first, I think, 3 or 4 years, we probably 3 and 4 days back and forth either place. And we really enjoyed it. And then the best part was about a year after we bought, Sharon and Dan Yeager, who grew up here. Sharon was actually from Maybell, but then when they got married, they lived here. I had never known them. They were lived here longer than I did, and I'm going to be 50 years as of September. They bought the little cabin next to us, and both of our kids were already adults at that point. So every weekend we were at the cabin, and we would go snowmobiling. We played games and cards and had dinners together, and I think the last 4 or 5 years then is when they moved to Grand Junction. And we still enjoyed the cabin, but I have a good friend up there, but she's part-time up there. So my book club is North Route, and we used to always stay 2 or 3 days at the cabin around book club time, and now I pretty much almost always just go from here and come back to here.
So you still own it?
Do I still own it?
Good.
Jim died a year and a half ago, and so I have barely stayed at the cabin because just by myself,
Yeah.
and especially if none of my friends are up there or around, there's not really much.
Well, and it's not exactly a short jaunt up there.
It's
a drive.
45 minutes. If the roads are good and not much traffic, you can be up there a little faster, but it's a lot easier though than, well, I sometimes wondered if you had a place that was 4 hours away, you would go for like a week or 2 weeks.
That's true.
And we would go for like 2 or 3 days, and then there'd be somebody's house for dinner or something going on in town.
You could have a little of both.
So it was fast enough to go back and forth. I'm sure there's advantages either way of having a place where you just you get out of town and you're gone.
Plus it was out in the country.
Yeah, we cross-country skied from there and snow machines, and we both had our own ATVs. I don't like to ride on the back, I like to drive. And if you've ever ridden on a snowmobile behind somebody, woo, you're bouncing everywhere. And I always wanted to drive. So
what do you do for hobbies and enjoyment right now?
I've always been a huge reader. I have to read for an hour before I go to bed at night, no matter what. And sometimes I'll be kind of falling asleep, but I want to keep going because the book is so good, which is sort of counterproductive to going to sleep. I used to do more crafts. I don't do very much anymore. I am still on from when I was connected to Hans Peak. I volunteer on the Museum and Heritage Funding Board, which is, fortunately, before the last recession, or the recession before last, the community, voted in a 50-cent sales tax for museums and for the public library. So there's a board that handles the funds, and I'm on that board, and half of the funds are given to the museums based on their per capita people. And then the other half is for grants. So we meet, like I told somebody, it's a great job. We meet 4 times a year. If you're good and do your homework ahead, it's a couple hours reading over the grants and doing things like that. And you give away money. I mean, that's a nice job. Instead of saying no to people, you're saying yes to people, so that it funds things like the first time the schoolhouse up at Hans Peak was painted was with the grant.
Nice.
Now it's done by it's not Walker family, Weaver family. It's a long-term family from up North Route, and they have a family reunion about every 5 years and come and paint the schoolhouse.
Oh, that's cool.
But it funds all the museums. And that's interesting because then you find out what's going on. And
Yeah. Is
So
that countywide then, or
it's
is
a
that
countywide.
countywide?
It includes Yampa and Hayden and Oak Creek, Hans Peak, Tread of Pioneers, and Historic Rock County.
Okay.
And as you know, I majored in history
Yeah.
first time through in college,
Yeah.
so that's always been my interest.
So is there anything else? The reason I thought this project would be fun is just because of what the things that you said. One of the last people to work at that old building, and you hate to say it, but if that was 40, 50 years ago, we're gonna start slipping away here.
Mhm.
Pretty soon there won't be a Mary Brassel,
Mhm.
Walden Brassel, and
Mhm.
Bud Root. And
Mhm.
are there any other stories that, I mean, you said one of the reasons it was special to you is because we were all young, starting our families. Do you think it would be the same teaching now as it was then? Or what was good about that compared to maybe now?
When I started out in teaching, there was a lot more community and parental respect for teachers. Kids knew that if you called home, that the parents believed what the teacher told them.
Mhm.
And kids were like, oh, don't, I'll get in trouble at home too. And there was a lot of support.
Mhm.
I found that the best way to talk to parents is not to tell them, not to label what their children did. You know, like they were rude or something like that. Because as a parent, you instantly want to
Yeah.
protect your child. I would just say, you know, your child from their point of view is telling you what they think.
Mhm.
But they're 12 years old. So I'm going to tell you from my perspective what happened.
Mhm.
And then I would tell them exactly the behavior that I observed. And they would go, oh, that was pretty rude. Or, you know, he wasn't doing what he'd been asked to do, was he? He goes, no. And she
Mhm.
kind of wasn't tuned in that day. And parents were always really agreeable and knew that you were interested in their kid, and that you were, you know, were interested. You were both in it together. There was
Yeah.
a connection of wanting what's best for this child. And I only saw that disappearing the last maybe 5 years I taught. And I didn't even really have it happen until the last year I taught. It just, when somebody says, well, the two of you just have never learned to get along, it's
Yeah.
like, oh, you know, gee, I guess I didn't think that was my job to get along. I thought my job was to be
To be
a teacher
teaching.
and the adult in the room. And
Mhm. Yeah, I've heard that from a couple of people who, it just changed. The
Mhm.
parental dynamics
Mhm.
changed a bit.
well, and I know Brock, my youngest, was born in '83, and when he was in 8th grade, Cheri Shivey taught at the middle school. She was a good friend of mine. She taught history, and the student said, oh, well, she's found my homework on the floor and she threw it in the trash. I went, oh, come on. No teacher's going to do that. And the parent believed it and called the teacher up and said, why did you throw my child's, you know, it's like, that was at the new building.
Yeah.
But I mean, it was,
But years later,
it was a teacher I taught with at the old building. And
Yeah.
Cheri had taught at the, maybe she
I'm
didn't. No,
I'm
she
not
didn't.
so sure she did.
No, I don't think she did actually.
Yeah, but still,
Yeah.
that the parent would believe that a teacher would do that.
Yeah. We did so much together. Like I said, we had at least one door activity on a Saturday, probably every month. And then we probably had at least one party. And we always had a Halloween party. We always dressed up for Halloween. And even the other years that, because I was 5 years at the old building downtown, and then 25 years at the school at Strawberry Park. And my very last year, The year before, I had been on the collective bargaining team, which was for salaries for certified and non-certified staff. And we had met for Halloween during the school day. So I wore my Halloween sweater. And then the very last year, I kind of thought, oh, I don't want to really have to dress up for Halloween. But I just decided I'm going to do it, so I did.
Did you get any comments that day?
I think when we had our retirement party, I must have said something to Jerry Buelter about, I really considered not dressing up today, but I just decided you've done it every other year, you might as well just dig in and do it anyway. And he brought it up at the retirement dinner.
Yeah, I did remember. We had a teacher prom.
I remember the teacher prom out at Strawberry Park.
Strawberry Park, yeah, we had it out at Bear Pole. Forgotten about that one. That was a party.
And I actually fit in a dress that I'd worn in my senior prom. And my husband wore his Navy uniform. And he'd been in the Navy from like 18 to 22, so that was it smelled like mothballs. When we were dancing, I could smell the mothballs on the
That's probably not conducive.
Sailor uniform, but.
Well, we went through all my questions, but is there any last comment you would make about?
I know I digressed into the newer building as well, but I think the foundation for all of it started at the old building downtown. It was a fairly compact school. We were full, even though it wasn't as big as the newer building. We were full. Like I said, we were all close to the same age. Just a lot of similarities, a lot of differences. People came from all over, but everybody wanted to live somewhere where it was environmentally pleasant, and were interested in the environment, and that whole solid basis of friendship, I think, lasted over into the new building. I don't think we really lost it until we went to having lunches by grade level. We always had lunch, all 6th, 7th, and 8th grade teachers together, until maybe the last 4 or 5 years that I taught.
Yeah, we were divided.
And so we all saw each other. That's how you keep things from, you rub somebody wrong or do something, but if you never see each other, which we never saw the other grades and kind of didn't know what was going on in those grades, made a huge difference.
That's good.
We had the smallest teacher's room possible in the old building. It was a little room. I mean, if you look at my living room and my dining room, it was about the size of my dining room. And one year, Bud Root was colorblind, and he had the little sofas reupholstered in red Inauguhide, and he was going to paint the walls red. And somebody told him, you can't do that. No, don't do that. But we had these red couches, and so we all, we're 3 people to a little teeny couch, eating our lunches and talking and doing all that. And that camaraderie, that connectedness, carried over into the new building for a long time.
Right.
What I think is interesting is how we moved into the new building.
Do you remember that year, that move?
Yeah.
Do tell.
They would never be able to do it now because of the liability.
Yeah.
You had kids who chose to come back that day. They didn't have to come back. So kids that you had as students came back to your classroom. And you and those kids packed your boxes of bookshelves. Then they helped carry boxes. I think other teachers, I don't remember, community members who did all the moving onto the trucks. But then everything from like my classroom was moved onto that truck. And I had a little classroom, so I probably had another classroom on that truck. Then we rode over, and I don't remember how we rode over, piled kids in a couple of cars or what we did. Got there, and then the kids and I moved all my books, all my desks, everything back into my new room at the school.
So when you get to Steamboat Springs Middle School on the Strawberry Park campus, you have kids carrying desks? You're right.
They moved my whole room into my room. My desks, my chairs, and I kept the Jackson chairs that I had from the old building because the school wasn't buying the separate desk and chair, and that's what kids liked. They liked them better than the ones with the built-in
Connected in.
like we had in college. But they really liked the desk where you could put stuff underneath. There was a shelf underneath the desk. And one thing I probably started at the old school, I would have the kids wash their desks with a baby wipe a couple times a year. And of course, if you do that and there's alcohol in the baby wipe, when you pick it up, your handprint is there in black. And I really did it to, one, clean the desks, and to remind them that's why you need to wash your hands before lunch every day. Well, a lot of it was graphite from the pencils, so it wasn't all grime, but they sure thought it was grime. So they, oh gosh, yeah, you gotta pay attention. There are germs and dirt everywhere.
Yeah, or the alcohol.
And I had them clean my room the last 2 days of school. I just felt it was part of learning that this was your classroom. You know, at the end, a couple of years, kids go, well, why are we doing this? And I was like, well, this was your classroom. Your job was to come to school every day and come to class. So your job is to help clean up at the end of the school year.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I had them wash the desks and chairs, which is not that onerous. It's not like they had to clean the floors and clean the windows or do that, but it was just the idea that, you know, this was your classroom. You participate in closing up and cleaning up the room.
I like it. Well, thank you. Thank you, Becky. This was so much fun.
I wish I could remember some really wild stories. Well, I did, but I wouldn't tell them. Before I came, apparently there were some really wild parties.
There might have been.
Where
Did we record that? Because maybe we shouldn't record.
I was going to say, you still got the red light on. Maybe I should quit while I'm ahead.
I'm not turning it off.
Yeah, we'll let Katie edit. She can edit away. Well, because everybody was so young, people were straight out of college, and there probably were. And we just had somebody tell us yesterday that I came to Steamboat in the 70s, and it was wild, and I liked it that way.
Well, I missed the real wild parties. I think people had gotten married by then, and a few people were starting families. But I remember they told stories about somebody, Cecile, somebody that I never met. She and 2 or 3 women hid in the bathtub at somebody's house. And when some man came in to use the toilet, they whipped back the curtain and scared him to death. Which is pretty inappropriate.
There are some wild teacher units, including Matt Mark Drake. I think we're finished.
Oh, I should have told you about Cheri. She was the teacher's aide when I started, and she made all my bulletin boards. She was such an artist, and I wanted bulletin boards at least for every season. So she made my bulletin boards for me, and I think you even put them up for me to start with. Then you didn't have time at the new building, but the old building you did. And at the old building you did some paper grading, and we never had it so good in terms of help and support and extra people working with and for the teachers.
I think that was I was the last teacher's aide for the middle school. And then eventually it was required that special ed had aides. And we kind of morphed into that, and the regular teachers, whatever, didn't have an aide anymore, which I always thought was kind of sad that they never replaced me.
And I figured out, and I don't think anybody else knew about it, and I got tired of running my own papers. And I actually planned a week ahead. I don't think everybody planned a week ahead, but I would plan a week ahead. And I would take papers down to the office, and you had student aides for a long time. And because I didn't need them for a week, I could ask for 50 copies or 100 copies of such and so. And then I got tired of writing down what I wanted. So I actually made, Xerox for and cut them in fourths. And had a little piece of paper, how many copies I wanted, what paper, if I wanted them colored or white papered, the date I needed them, and then I had my name plus, I had all that written down, and then I would just fill it in and put it there and give it to you, and you guys got it run off for me. And it was
Probably
just,
taught me how to be so organized.
it was a great time saver. And somebody else, what are you doing? I think it was Cheri Kerrigan, and I think she started doing it.
Yeah,
But it ended when you guys didn't have teachers, you didn't have student aides anymore.
yeah.
I think for a couple of years you still managed to do mine for me,
did it
but
for
that
a
was
while, yeah.
more was a favor than anything
Because I was
else.
trying to think, I was hired as an office aide, I think, but it became office aide, teacher's aide.
And then you became a
And
full-time
then
secretary.
Secretary, yeah. And then no more teacher's aide.
They
Just too
did-
bad.
They did for a while have people that were grading papers for the English teachers.
Yeah,
I forget what they were called.
I don't either. You're right, that's right, I
And
forgot about
then
that.
they kind of morphed into being used by the administration more than
Mm-hmm.
the teachers. But
Why was that so far back?
and my fondest memories are still pretty much with the teachers that were at the
The old school.
school with me. Yeah.
Mine too, mine too. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you for doing this.
You're so welcome.
Yeah, they'll have to edit and put that part in about
The
Cheri.
wild part is, oh,
No, you.
it's about me. Yeah, we'll leave the editing to Katie. She'll figure it out.